Today's topic, ladies and gentlemen, is all about how to get listings in this market. I can't wait for you to meet today's guest today on the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to have an absolute blast. Joining us today on the Think Bigger Real Estate Show, I am your host, Justin Stoddart. I have with me today an absolute legend, Hall of Famer in the real estate world. His name is Tim Harris. He's an absolute stud. The guy has, he and his wife, Julie, they created the probably the most prominent coaching program slash real estate podcast, Real Estate Coaching Radio. If you're not familiar with it, you're missing out. Tim Harris, thank you for coming on the show today. Tim, you there?
Thank you, and hopefully you won't have connected. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, it was a little delayed there.
Listen,
so anyway.
We live in Puerto Rico, and sometimes the internet connection, at the worst times, it goes to hell. So there's nothing I can do about it. So thank you for your introduction. I appreciate it. We'll do the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Hey, excited to have you here. Listen, let's cut right to the chase. Agents don't have a lot of time right now. They're running around. Anytime they're working with buyers right now, they're facing dozens of competing offers. You and I both know that the best solution, although it's still not an easy one, is to be on the listing side. You interview the top agents in the world. You've been that yourself. Talk to us. What are the best strategies you're seeing in this tight market to get listings when it seems like they are few and far between?
I would like to start out with the simple, cold, hard fact that the buyer-agent business model is evaporating in front of all of us, because it really is. And if you want to I can encapsulate that into a few micro points. But
Please.
buyer-agent co-op commissions are no longer an entitlement in many markets to the transaction. In the essence, the way it's traditionally worked is the buyer agent represents a buyer, the seller pays the buyer's agent commission. Those things are going away in some markets completely, but in almost all markets, even the Midwestern states that operate years behind the coastal states, you're still seeing that the buyer agent side commission is dropping. Less than 2% is normal now, and that trend is going to continue. And what we're dealing with is it's a pendulum, right? So here was the bottom of the buyer's market, 2008, 2009. Now the pendulum swung all the way to the seller's market, and until it starts to basically balance out again, which is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, things are just going to get worse for buyer's agents. So commissions are being depleted, but here's the other thing that nobody's talking about. The number of new agents getting into the business is at a historic high. There's more agents getting licenses right now, more people that are going to be becoming active agents over the next really 6 to 12 months. What were they doing during COVID? After they watched the Netflix, after they put on their COVID-19, then they all sat and got their pre-licensing. And so all those people are coming to the market. And what are all agents told to do the second they get real estate licenses? Work with buyers. So you have a shortage of inventory, you have reducing commissions, you have increasing competition. In some markets, the competition is going to be increasing by 200-300%. So the buyer agent business model effectively now, because the pendulum swung all the way up here to the seller's market until it starts gravitating back down towards the balance. When it goes back, we're like right about here to right about here, even here, then buyer agent commissions will start increasing again, and all the rest of it's going to happen. But for now, if you're thinking you're going to make as much money off selling houses last year to buyers prominently, you're going to struggle. You might actually do the same number of units, but your average commission per paycheck is going to be a lot less because of the market forces that are happening. Again, not saying it's the end of buyer agency. Am saying that for the near-term future, starting this year, next year, that's going to be a hard time if you're not a listing agent, for sure. So your question is actually perfect.
Which is really interesting because those agents are actually working harder than ever, right? They're submitting a dozen offers to get maybe one accepted. And so their dollar per hour is comparable to being a barista.
Sorry. Yeah, I got to remember to not talk because there's a little delay. You hit it out of the park with what you said. So in our book, Harris Rules, and all of our coaching and all of the things we've done for the last couple decades, we've always said that working with buyers is physical labor. It's the opening of the doors. It's the driving around. You're selling your physical labor in exchange for hopefully a real estate transaction. On the listing side, it was mental labor. You could do most of it on the phone. You could do most of it just with an advanced skill set. You said prior to hitting record that working with sellers does require more skill set, and it absolutely does. And working with buyers, until now. Now it's actually working with buyers not only requires a ridiculously high skill set, because you have to find the inventory, you have to know how to negotiate, you have to, all these different complexities that buyer agents never before had to deal with. Before it was, you want to buy the house, it showed them 3 or 4 houses, they pick out the one they want and they buy a house. But nowadays it's finding the inventory, it's knowing how to compete to get the house for your buyer. It's all the complexities that are associated with a crazy extreme seller's market like what we're in. So working with buyers used to be mostly a physical labor, social type thing. Like you would work with me because you and I both like bi-wing planes or something, your plane above your shoulder, right? So we could find some commonality and then we work together. I'd show you houses for a couple Saturdays, you'd buy something, we're off to the next, off to the next one. But nowadays it doesn't work like that. I'm going to have to convince you in some markets, Justin, why you should pay me a commission, because the buyer's agent's commissions are going to go away. It's going to get to the point where I'm going to have to give you a professional presentation that shows you why you should be hiring me in the first place versus going to the listing agent directly, going to the 10 other people who just got real estate licenses, why you should hire me to be your buyer's agent. But in some markets, if the commissions are completely evaporated, which will happen on the buyer agent side, yeah, it definitely will. I'm going to have to show you and explain to you why, Justin, I want you to work with me. These are the values I bring to you. This is my USPs in essence. But in addition to that, Justin, you're going to have to pay me a commission. And buyer's agents have never actually had to compete, present, and let alone sell the reason the buyer should be paying the commission. And that's what's going to start happening in some markets. Because
buyers, you're saying, are comfortable doing it on their own. They're saying, I can find the house. I don't see that much telling what you're doing. I'm just going to go straight to the listing agent and work out a deal there.
Right. I mean, I didn't go to the listing agent before as a buyer because of the fact that I like you. You're a great guy. You've got 6 kids, which, by the way, 6 kids. Wow. Okay. So you've got, I relate to you, and you're a great guy and you got a cool car and we can have fun. You'll buy me some Starbucks. I'll buy a house and we'll be friends forever. Right. But nowadays you can't find me the house because you're not a listing agent, because we've been trying. We keep on having our asses handed to us because we're competing with 20 different offers. And now I'm going to say, Justin, I love you, brother. But I'm going to go directly to that seller. I'm going to go directly to that listing agent because I need to make sure I got a house for my family. You see how it's the pendulum, it's swung. And so market forces are going to squeeze out the buyer's agents because in a lot of cases, the market is not going to tolerate that added person in the process. That's basically all we're experiencing.
It seems to me that consumers saw it. So help us walk through this a little bit. It seems to me that consumers in this market, like if they don't have a buyer's agent, they're in real trouble going up against a dozen other offers that do. You think consumers are going to use what they would have paid their buyer's agent as leverage to be able to offer more? Is that kind of your rationale there as to why?
Okay. So you're saying a couple different things there, but let me make it practical. What we have seen, and we have thousands of coaching clients all over the United States, Canada, now we have probably 100 in Europe now. But we've seen all over the world, not just in the United States, where there is a buyer's agent commission, which is prominently United States and Canada, and there's some places in Europe that operate like we do, is that the buyer's agents, to make their offer more appealing, let's say the co-op, we're not talking percentages here, but we know what the traditional co-op has been, right? So let's say you're selling in Omaha, Nebraska, and you're trying to get some house together and you want your buyer to win, you're actually going to offer in the purchase contract a % of your commission to that listing agent and to that seller, so that the net to the seller is better because they're having to pay you less. So you're volunteering to take a financial haircut, because otherwise, how are you going to keep yourself competitive and get your buyer a house? It's like you either make a little bit of money or you make no money. That's, again, the elements of this market. And I hate it, frankly. I believe in buyer's agent. I do. And I believe what you said, that they bring a value. Some of them bring a value. But buyers are going directly to listing agents. And that trend is going to continue for at least the next 3 to 5 years until the market starts to pivot back and we enter some sort of equilibrium state.
Fascinating. So back to today's topic, talk to us, Todd, that if that's the reality of the buyer's agent market, what is the best chance that agents have to go get listings? Obviously, there's a number of different ways, right? Dozens and dozens of ways to effectively get listings. But
are there? Let's talk about that. Okay. I'm 51 and I'm guessing you're 30 something.
I'm 41.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Damn, those 6 kids have kept you young. Good job, man.
Dream.
It's really good lighting, right? So here's a thought for you. is that there's a generational divide and what agents are willing to do to attract business. And it just is there, and there's no sense of denying it. And here's the biggest difference. Most agents getting in the business, because they have no sales skills, no real business background, they're going to be attracted to passive lead generation ideas, and they're never going to learn how to proactively lead generate. So there's people say there's two ways you form a business. There's really only one way you form a business. You have to be a proactive lead generator first, and then if you choose to, you can enhance with passive lead generation. But if you do it the other way around, I'm going to create TikTok videos, social networking, my CRM, I'm going to do all this digital stuff, I'm going to hide behind my screen, and somehow miraculously that's going to bring business to me. You might get some, but it sure as hell is not going to be consistent business. And what we teach people in our coaching company is, okay, you can do that stuff, the fun stuff, you can do that after you've learned how to proactively lead generate. Because Justin, if you were hiring me, well, I don't personally coach anymore, but if you were hiring me to be your personal coach, the first thing I'd want to teach you how to do is go after, are we good? I see a stall out. Yeah, we're good, right?
We're good. Keep going.
It's the Puerto Rico effect, man. I'm telling you, it's constant anxiety doing Zooms. All right. So if you were to hire me to be your coach, the first thing I would do is I would say, let's go to the marketplace and let's look for sellers that already have their hands in their air and saying, yes, I want to sell my house. Let's not go onto Facebook and do all this, social networking jib jab. No, let's not talk about that. Your job is to make money for you and your family as fast as possible. I want to take you directly to where there's sellers right now in your marketplace that have their hands in the air and say, yes, I want to sell my house. We don't have to really look for those people. They already have their hands in the air. So the idea that agents are coming into this business and they're saying, well, I have to buy leads, or how can I find leads, or I have to create a brand, or I have to do all this other stuff. It's not true. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You just have to develop the skill set to be able to go directly after the people who already have their hands in the air saying, yes, I want to sell my house. And that's honestly the biggest fraud on real estate agents has been committed in the last 15 years. Not saying what I just said, telling agents that they have to create all these passive lead generation venues and never telling them the truth that they have to learn to be proactive lead generators. And so who have been perpetuating those ideas? So here's a little interesting fact. The average agent historically has been in and out of the business within less than 24 months. I'm sure you've heard that. Yep. So Julie and I have done some anecdotal research, and it was only looking at, it's anecdotal at best. We'd compare, I won't bore you, but I'll tell you this. We think the average amount of time that an agent's in business now is not 24 months. It's basically about a year and falling. So here we're in this era where agents can buy leads. They're told to create, you got to be the online mayor of. I don't know if I'm offending you by saying this. I don't know if you're a marketer guy, because marketing people try to, hang me up for saying this, but it's the truth. If you want to make money, if you want to help people, why don't you go directly to the people that already have their hand in the air, and why don't you reach at them and why don't you help them, opposed to just trying to create a brand for yourself? It goes back to the essence of the question. The essence, and it's one of our chapters in our book. At the end of the day, if you want ever increasing levels of success, everybody knows this intuitively by it. Oh, when I say this, you're going to say, of course, that just makes sense. But if you want ever increasing levels of success in your life, financial, just for the sake of this conversation, you have to learn to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. That's it. Learn to do what you don't want to do. So if I ask you, a real estate practitioner, what are the 3 things you want to do the least in your real estate business? I know what you're going to say. You're not going to say, I don't want to create a YouTube video. You're not going to say, I don't want to do a podcast. You're going to say, I don't want to pick up the phone, number one, right? That's what most agents would say, like 99.9% of them. But on the other side of the phone calls, that's where the money is, right?
Yeah. So you're saying that the people that are raising their hands, you're defining those as for sale by owner, expired listings.
It's way more than that. Yeah, those are good places to start because that's the easiest information to get, but for sure. For sale by owners and expireds. As a matter of fact, to your point, I think if someone were to come into the business now, we preach the spokes on the wheel concept. It's very simple. You have a wheel, you have multiple spokes. Each spoke, represents a source of business. Your goal is to have 5 to 7 spokes, but your first 3 or 4 spokes have to be proactive lead generation spokes. And if you then want to enhance with passive marketing, passive lead generation, you can, but the first spokes that go on your wheel have to be the proactive ones. So, and this is not necessarily proactive, but the first one we tell agents to do is their centers of influence and past clients. And by the way, we don't want them dripping tchotchkes on them and delivering pies and garbage like that. We tell them how to do a center of influence past client, no fancy CRM or long-term drip campaign. We tell them what to do, and it doesn't cost any money. And then the next thing we want them to do, to what you said, is choose either expireds or for sale by owners. Personally, I would choose expireds. And then we show them how to go after other sources of proactive lead generation. And here's what happens. When they do it, when they actually, you don't focus, you don't go from this spoke to this spoke to this spoke and kind of mash it all together. You do the center of influence past client thing first, which shouldn't take you any more than literally 24 hours to set up. It's simple. And then after that, I would suggest you choose the expired spoke. Don't say there's no expireds in your market, because there are. I would choose the expired spoke next, and I would master that, become like the best version of you hunting expireds as you can before you go on to the next one. And then certainly don't, you have to really focus on one thing to really master that. And then what happens is, after you get really good at these proactive lead generation spokes, most of those agents never do the passive lead generation ever. They might have a cursory Facebook page or a Google My Business page, or who knows, maybe they even have a logo created, but they know their bread and butter is around those proactive spokes. So if I were coaching you, what I would say is, every day, Justin, and I'm going to help you get to the point where every single day you're going to set a pre-qualified listing appointment, and every single afternoon you're going to go on a listing appointment, and you're going to take 90% of them. That is your entire business model. So the only thing, Justin, I want you to get really good at is proactive lead generation, pre-qualifying, presenting, and negotiating. Those 4 things. You can be terrible at everything else because those are the easiest things to delegate or just frankly not do. Those 4 things will make you rich in real estate because it'll create profit.
So really your methodology is simple. Like, before noon, your job is to get a listing appointment. Afternoon, your job is to go present and secure that listing. You do that every day. Definitely. There's wealth there.
Right, exactly. And why before noon? And you're probably discovering this because you're 41. But people, as they get older, have their best energy in the morning, for sure. And if your hormones are imbalanced, you're feeling, all the having had the sleep, and you don't have a bunch of blah, 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 blah. So the morning is, generally speaking, the best time, but it's not true for everybody. Some people will do their lead generation on the weekends, and sometimes they'll do it in the evenings. It just doesn't look. The bottom line is do not, if you avoid the real work of real estate, which is what we're talking about, the probability of you succeeding long-term, you might churn some houses, you might sell some houses, but your profit you're going to make out of your business is going to be non-existent because you had to buy that business. And let's be clear, you are buying your business, whether you do it proactively or passively. One way you're buying it for your time, and the other way you're buying it with your money. But on doing it proactively, you're actually making a profit. You make $10,000, you're going to keep, $9,000 of it, whatever your broker split is. Will you do it the other way? It's constant trial and error. Oh, did you hear this new way to generate Facebook ads? Oh, did you hear about Clubhouse, which I love Clubhouse. But did you hear about this new thing on Clubhouse? And now I'm spending money there, and da-da-da-da-da. Pick up the phone, have the skill set, earn the right to be the listing agent. And there's no limit to how much money you can make. And it has consistent cash flow that way too.
So as I mentioned, Todd, Tim, our window today is short. So I want to ask for your best script for calling an expired listing. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that are saying, I'm not doing that because I'm going to sound like the person I don't want to, I'm going to be cold calling in, and people are going to be angry at me. It's just a difficult way to make a living. And you're saying it doesn't have to be that way. What's the best advice you could give to somebody to overcome that and say, I'm going to convert expired listings into appointments?
That's a great question. You got to understand the psychology of an expired seller. Have you ever had a personal house listing? Have you ever experienced that being an expired? You have. Okay, that's perfect then. How did you feel when that listing expired?
Yeah, I was disappointed.
Were you a little embarrassed?
I don't know if embarrassed is the right word, but I was frustrated. I was ready for it to go. My timing was no longer, kind of going the way that I wanted it to. Right? It was now everything is interrupted. Was this a personal house that you lived in, or an investment? Okay, so did you feel, if you were to think about it, and I'm not giving you these emotions, but this is how sellers really feel, and this is going to help you move past your resistance of calling them. When an expired happens, they feel rejected. And if it's a house they lived in, you're not just rejecting my house, you're rejecting me personally, because how can you not love the house where I've raised my kids and where I've had all these happy memories? So an expired subconsciously is feeling deeply rejected and hurt emotionally. Now, not all of them are going to react adversarially, but you've got to move past that emotionally. You have to
understand that that is the emotion that that person's experiencing. And then, by the way, the scripts are easy after that. The hard part for agents is understanding that the person that they're calling needs their help, and you're there to help. All the, like, what prevents agents from picking up the phone, let alone doing it long enough to become successful at it, is they're thinking about themselves. If I call you as an expired listing, and Julie and I sold, hundreds of houses when we sold real estate back in the 90s, when we had, between 100 and 200 a year for almost 10 years, and we did a lot of expireds. And I remember originally when I started calling, it was like, why are these people being so mean to me? Da, 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 da. And it took, longer than it should have, as I was in my early 20s, to realize that these people were feeling rejected. They weren't rejecting me. And so what I had to set aside is my ego feeling rejected. And so what I did is I wrote a sign up and I put it up on my wall. I said, how can I help you? And it wasn't something I would say, it's something I would think. Because when you're coming from a position of being of service and of gratitude, then your ego is not as dominant. It's still there. That fear of rejection is always going to be there. It never goes away, but it's a little bit subdued. And so you might react initially. I might hear some tonality in your voice. It's a little adversarial. I just have to remember that's your pain, and I have to help you make that pain go away. And after that, learning scripts is easy. The psychology of knowing what you're doing, you're here to help people. That's the number one thing. I'm going to learn my script. I'm going to pound out calls. I'm going to set appointments. You can do that. You can force yourself through it. You can, bludgeon yourself every day to do it. But really, it all starts with the true motivation of wanting to help people. And then everything else is easier. Does that make sense intellectually?
No, it does. And you've really tapped into kind of the purpose behind this show, is that most problems and opportunities in real estate, they all begin in our own head. And what you've helped us to uncover here today, Tim, is the fact that oftentimes we have this concept of who we are when we're doing business in the way you're describing. And what you're saying is, if you simply change your paradigm, if you simply change your mindset, you're going to be looking at things differently. You're going to look at who you're talking to differently, and you're going to be able to step up and come from a place of care as opposed to a place of, I'm a shark here trying to get something from these people. No, I'm here trying to give something to these people because they're in emotional need right now, and I have the ability to help them and comfort them.
That's right. You have 6 kids. When you hear, if you're prospecting, you just channel your youngest kid having some problem, struggling with putting on a shoe or something, and you just channel that emotion. And when you pick up that phone, you're going to all of a sudden be operating on a completely different plane than you were before. I don't want to sound like I'm a woo-woo guy, a mindset woo-woo guy, because I'm definitely not. I believe in grinding it out and doing the real work. But at the end of the day, you can manipulate yourself through your emotions. And that person on the other end of the phone, they're going to feel it. Yeah. Like when you were describing what your mission was on your podcast, I felt that, that was real.
Yeah.
So.
Tim, this has been awesome. I want to ask you one more question, and then we're going to wrap up. Final question is this. You are a big thinker. You help other people be big thinkers. What is it that you do to continue to grow, to continue to expand your possibilities?
Always. Julie and I live in a Ritz-Carlton reserve property in Dorado Beach, Puerto Rico. And every day we are running into other entrepreneurs and business owners. And we've lived here for almost 2 years. And some of the people we've made friends with. Here's the answer to your question. Be a small fish in a big pond. That's the answer to your question. I could tell you stories about the people. I was talking to a guy last night that's having his $13 million yacht delivered. And he's bemoaning the fact that he didn't have a helipad installed on the yacht. That was a real conversation. Remember, I'm a poor kid from Ohio, and I'm talking to a dude about his lack of helipad, and he's regretting it. That's amazing.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Tim, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really pouring into us, helping us to see a different perspective of calling expired listing. I think it's been valuable for everybody, regardless of whether or not that's one of your key lead generation tactics or not. You've opened my eyes to a new way of going about this, and a new way of taking care of people at a time that they need it. So Tim, total pleasure. Thank you for all that you do for the industry. And to everybody listening today, my final request is this: go think bigger. Thanks, Tim, for helping us do that today.
Amen, brother.